Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Jess, and today I am here with my friend Shannon. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Jess.
This conversation today kind of has come out of Shannon and I have been friends for about 5 years, fair?
Yeah.
And we're both counselors over at City Care, and we've just lived a lot of life together. And I think that our friendship and some of the conversations and especially things that you're going through, I was just thinking a couple weeks ago about like that. It would just be something that would be interesting to record and for us to talk about, because we kind of like have really, I think, worked on kind of pressing into the awkward or like the things that maybe people don't talk about or that we're going through, and not being afraid to talk about those things together in friendship. And so thank you for being here today. This has kind of come out of Shannon you have some medical diagnosis and things that we're going to get into. But first, let's introduce you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Shannon Persinger, and I work over at City Care Counseling with Jess. And I am married to my lovely husband, Jordy. And he's also been a pastor in the Omaha metro area for 10 years. And so we have a big history and background of being in ministry too. And then we've got 2 little kids at home. We've got a girl who's 7 and then a little 2-year-old boy. And so we just are busy doing life as parents, as ministry leaders, and then also in my counseling practice as well.
Yes. And that's where we get to work a lot together, and that's super fun. I think today, like our tone and just kind of like how we are as friends is just very honest and very hopeful. And I think we're just very authentic. And so I think that that's the heart of what we're talking about today, is we really want those things to come through. Fair. Would you say that that's like how we are together? Good.
Yes, I think we are very open and honest with one another.
Yes.
Sometimes maybe too much, but it's a good thing.
So you are coming up on, having open heart surgery in 2 weeks.
Yep, May 8th.
May 8th. So it's coming up pretty quick. And we want to talk about that today because that's scary. It's a big diagnosis. There's a lot of uncertainties and there's a lot of odds that feel stacked against. And it's kind of like the unspoken things. But before we get into that, talk a little bit about your heart, like where you got diagnosed as a baby, right?
Yeah. I was born a typical blue baby where they thought there was a hole in my heart, which then was giving me and providing me oxygen, which was a good thing until that hole started to close up. And then I turned fully blue one night when I was about 3 weeks old in the crib in the middle of the night. And I had to get rushed to Iowa City Hospital, where they found my hole had closed in my heart and my chambers were actually wired differently. So my blood was flowing backwards and I was no longer receiving oxygen. And so this was back in 1994 when the industry of open heart surgery was still relatively new. And these typical blue baby cases didn't survive. It was just kind of failure to thrive, and let's see how long this baby can last. So it was very new at the time. Very scary to my parents. And so they did a couple surgery operations that they don't even do till this day. Like they stopped doing them now. And so, which has caused some complications now for this next surgery, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, so my parents just had to trust the surgeons. And there was only one surgeon at Iowa City Hospital at the time who could do the arterial switch and banding that my little precious baby body needed. And she was on vacation. And so they actually had to call her and fly her in for an emergency surgery to keep me alive. So thankful to her and her family for that major sacrifice to come in and do this high-risk surgery on this tiny little baby just to see how much more life they could give me. So from the very beginning, I've been a high-risk baby with lots and lots of prayer surrounding my little life and to keep just that infant alive and sustained for so long. And obviously I'm here today at 30 years old. And so those trial surgeries in the 90s worked.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
And so the heart industry has learned a lot from these first batch of surgeries in the 80s and 90s.
Did you know as you were growing up that you had, like, did your parents talk to you about like, hey, you had this as a baby? Because I know it maybe caused some complications growing up, like middle school, high school.
Yes. So I always grew up knowing that I had heart complications. I remember my mom would always be checking to see if my lips were turning blue, like all the time.
So she's like always coming in and checking.
Yeah. And so being a normal kid was kind of hard for me at times. I would love running around the neighborhood with all the other kids, just keeping up with them. But I always had this nagging in the back of my mind, like, are you doing too much? And so as a kid, it didn't affect me too much because kids are pretty resilient. It affected me the most in school because I knew I had limitations that made me different. And there's parts of my childhood that I remember, like the mile test gives me huge anxiety still to this day.
Oh, yeah.
And when I'm at the gym, they're like, we're running a mile today. I'm like, no, I'm not. Because my whole life I was told I couldn't do that. And they were afraid for me to push those limits and those boundaries. And so I got lots of exemptions for gym class. And I just remember kids laughing at me, mocking me, making fun of me because I couldn't do what they were doing. And so through years of therapy, I've worked through some of that, of thinking back to that little scared girl on the sideline when everybody else is running a mile and yet I'm different. And so it took me years to accept that. In high school, things were a lot better for my heart, I would say. I had another major open heart surgery in 4th grade. That was my last.
Was that your first second open heart?
That was my second open heart, was in 4th grade. Yep. And so after that, life felt relatively normal for me with some limitations still. They didn't want me to overexert myself. But then as you start to develop, you want to work out, you want to exercise. And I remember in high school this might have been 8th grade. Either 8th grade or 9th grade was the first time I passed out running because I was trying to lose weight like every other girl. And I was trying to run that mile I was told I never could and passed out a few blocks away from home. And so thinking back, I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. And so I had to just learn what were my warning signs. And then through convincing of my cardiology team, I was able to do high school cheerleading. And thankfully, what are the odds? My cheer coach, her son had the exact same heart defect that I was born with in the exact same year. So we were both 1994 babies, born with transposition, having these trial and error surgeries at Iowa City Hospital. So she was great to have as a coach to keep an eye on me and to make sure that I wasn't overdoing it and overexerting as much.
So with your heart defect, is that a way to put it?
Yeah.
How, like, what does that make your heart do now? Like that, where my heart just, does the normal pumping in and out. Like, what does yours look like?
Mine has a really extreme heart murmur. So you can hear the blood trying to force through those arteries. So people describe it to me as a washing machine. If you hear your washing machine running, that's not how your heart should sound, but that's what mine's doing. Mine is constantly trying to force and push that blood through, which everyone else's heart does effortlessly. So when I exercise, my heart rate jumps up really quickly, usually up into the 170s, 180s. They don't like me to go too close to 200, but 189 is pretty normal for me to reach very quickly.
Okay. Like exerting yourself or?
Yep. And that usually happens within the first minute of exercise.
Okay.
And then on a day-to-day basis, just continual fatigue, just tired all the time, wanting to sleep often, even if I got a good night's sleep the night before. Right. And then fluttering, skipping of beats. And
then it's like waking up and taking care of 2 kids and doing like all normal life things and then having to fit that in there.
Yep.
And then you had a third open heart.
So
what was that a couple years ago?
Lots of heart caths. So 2 major open heart surgeries. Then the one when I was an infant, the very first one was a thoracotomy, which they don't do these days anymore. And then I think what you're referring to was my heart cath when they put the new valve in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
so,
yes, that's right.
Yeah. So a few years ago, well, actually after I had my first baby, who's now 7, they were very concerned at the pressures and the levels in my heart. And so after they had her, they were watching it extra close, more than they have over the years. And even being able to have a baby with this heart condition was new to the industry. So no one really knew how that was going to affect me. And so my husband and I were ready for baby number 2. And we had been going through secondary infertility for 3 years, which was very hard for us. And one day my cardiologist was like, hey, I know you really want to have a baby. And I know this is a goal of your guys to grow your family, but you have to stop because we have to have surgery. And that was hard for us to sink in. But then looking back, we know like it was not God's timing for us to have that baby because God knew my heart couldn't have handled that. And so had I gotten pregnant before that valve got put in, my heart would not have been able to sustain the extra blood and pressure that just comes alongside pregnancy. So they put a Melody valve in place. And
what's that? What's a Melody valve?
I don't know.
Okay. It's a valve that helps your blood flow through your heart.
Yes. I feel like I don't want to misspeak, but yes.
It's a pretty name for.
Yeah, it's a Melody valve and it helps your blood flow efficiently through your body. Opened it up for me to be able to breathe and work out better and be able to have those increases of pressure in your heart a lot easier. So I ended up running
I
ended up, the 5K when I was 7.
The Disney 5K.
Yes, my Disney World 5K when I was 7 months pregnant with our now 2-year-old little boy. And so to just see the working miracles that came along with that new valve was amazing and exhilarating and life-changing. I went from running my first mile ever that year to running a 5K, 7 months pregnant.
Ugh, I remember you doing that and sending me pictures, and I'm like, wow, you're amazing.
Thanks. It was so much fun.
And then I feel like, I mean, you had a couple really good, solid years, like baby growing, had a baby, like working out. Sometimes I feel like you make laps around me at City Care. I'm like, how does this girl have so much energy? And I'm just like trying to make it through the day. It's amazing. But you know, a couple months ago, things started to change.
Yeah. So
and I think that's where we kind of want to talk, like sit for a little bit.
Yeah. Actually, I feel like I was able to mask my symptoms pretty well because I was being told by the medical team, well, if you keep losing baby weight, if you keep working harder at the gym, your heart's going to get better. But I knew towards the end of my pregnancy, my heart was not okay.
Like you could just feel like something's off.
Yes, something was off. Something was different. And I couldn't explain it. I just kept saying to my doctor, my heart feels angry all the time. And like it's trying to literally leave my body. And nobody understood what I was saying. And they just kept saying, well, you just had a baby. Give it time for your heart to get back to normal.
Yeah, you have lots of hormones. There's other things.
Yes. So all the typical baby things that would go away for a woman after they've been postpartum, my things didn't go away. They only ever kept getting worse. And it was really prominent to me probably this last summer when I was trying to run outside and trying to keep up at the gym and I couldn't. And I looked at my cardiologist. I'm like, I still cannot run 1/10 of a mile before I feel like I'm going to pass out. And this is not normal. So that then started this new journey of, again, lots of stress tests, which led to then another heart cath to see what was going on, which is where they ultimately discovered with either the last pregnancy or with working out or just a defect in the Melody valve, it has now fractured in several places. And so they couldn't simply go in and replace that valve through a normal cath procedure like they would.
I remember you being in that heart cath and being at City Care and praying and hoping for the best as your friend and praying with our friend Robin and Kathy for you to have like a successful heart cath. And then it was hard to like process for me, like that news did not come out great. And just just like I feel like I felt like that secondary, like, man, really? Like she's already been through so much and is facing so much. And I do think that I felt like a little like wrestling with God in that moment, as I'm sure you did too.
Yeah. I mean, here I am. This has maybe nothing to do with what we're talking about, but here I am in November. I just buried my father suddenly. And then in January told, hey, you know, here we were so confident that life was going to get back to normal for you. And just kidding, things are much worse than we ever anticipated. And so I think having this extra complication along with grief, I truly think you all, my closest friends and my family, felt that shocking news a lot heavier than I did because I'm still walking through the grief of losing my dad. And so it's still something that I'm freshly processing, where everybody else has been processing it now for months. I'm finally in a spot in my grief where I can focus on myself. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is big and it's heavy and it's scary.
Because ultimately that heart cath determined that you now need another open heart.
Yes. Yep. And what's different about this one than typical, so people are like, oh yeah, my grandma just had open heart.
Exactly.
It's so different because they're trying to recorrect surgeries that aren't done anymore. So there's my heart anatomy is not wired correctly. It's not an anatomically correct heart. So I've now had 2 heart caths to make sure that the mapping of my heart is what they're going to expect when they open me up. You don't have a lot of wiggle room when you're working with a heart if something goes wrong. And so they're trying to just map out every scenario and every case possible, how to make this successful. But when your surgeon looks at you and says, this is going to be a bit of arts and crafts, and I'm pretty stressed going in here, you feel the weight and the heaviness of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful to have one of the top surgeons in our nation doing this surgery. But when they describe to you and your husband how risky and how scary that surgery is, and you knowing you have to go home and put wills into place and
make decisions that you never thought you would have to, or have conversations that you never thought. I mean, we've had conversations that I never thought we would have.
Yeah.
About what could happen, mm-hmm. or what are we going to do? What do we need from me or your friends and family? Yeah.
Yeah. And thankfully we have attorneys to do those things for us.
Yes.
Because
I'm telling you what I need. Please go do this.
Yeah. Because it's not conversations you want to have with your spouse or your best friends beforehand saying, hey, if things don't go well, here's how you can honor me. But it's a reality that we're facing.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when you got out of that cardiologist appointment and he was saying this is very stressful. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be taking the map of your heart home, and our team is taking this map of your heart home and is going to be looking at this in their free time. They're not doing Sudoku. They're looking at Shannon's heart.
Yeah.
And something you said to me, I still think about it. You were telling me all this stuff and you have all these complications, and you were like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, man, what a heart that God has given you. I feel like that is just a holy space that you can only be in when Jesus is with you. And so can you talk a little bit about what that has been like? I mean, complications. I don't know if you want to talk about necessarily those or.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this last night, actually, this isn't just my story, and it's not just my journey. This is God's story and his journey, and he's going to do something with it. And along with that being God's story, it's also the story of my friends and the story of my family. And so as much as I want to be selfish and angry in the situation that I'm in, I can't, because it's not mine alone. And so I often do, and maybe this is the therapist in me, but I often do place myself into those that I'm talking to in the moment of, like I did, Jess, how are you doing? Are you okay? I know I'm one of your closest friends, so tell me, are you all right? Yeah. And I've been taking on that role of caring for others. And then, of course, I do allow myself the space to care for myself too. But I think naturally God has given me that empathy to care for others alongside me. And so it's just so natural and second nature for me to be like, okay, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter at the end of the day what happens to me, because what's going to matter is my friends and my family. How are they responding and how are they doing? Because if things go wrong, I get the eternity of heaven. I get the everlasting life, and I get the pain-free life. And if things go that way, I want to make sure everyone else is okay. However, if things go really well, I cannot wait to celebrate and to make you go on runs with me, Jess. We're going to Disney.
Yes, we are. I think just as your friend, one of the hardest things that I've had to process, and it feels weird saying this is the uncomfortability, I think, of these conversations, because I want to focus all on you, but in this scenario, I want to talk about the dual relationships. And one thing that I know was hard for you to process and was hard for me to process when we were talking about this is you had asked your surgeon, what's my percentage here? Give me some numbers, buddy.
Yep.
And he was he couldn't give you numbers. And so how do you, I mean, I think these are the things not openly talked about. Like, how do you process that? Like, how have you reconciled that in your heart as you move forward?
Yeah, I think even this conversation alone is helping me take a step towards reconciliation. Like just having these open conversations. But sitting in that room, I did ask the surgeon, I said, hear me out, buddy. Like, I need to know what's my probability of risk here. And when your surgeon looks at you and says, this is uncharted territory, I can't give you a percentage, and death is not your worst outcome, it completely takes the air out of the room. And I remember my husband, my surgeon, and his PA all just sitting there looking at each other, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. I mean, this top surgeon looking at you saying, I'm stressed and I want to make sure this goes well. That hits deep. Even as a Christian, that hits deep, even knowing like ultimately God is in the room and God can be there and he can be present. He can help this process. God's a healer, a redeemer, a restorer, but ultimately that might not be his will. And so just looking at, I'm a numbers person. It's that's the therapist in me.
Give us the percentage.
Yes, I want to know that percentage and
give us those statistics.
Yeah, even last week I was at my regular cardiologist and I said to him, okay, I asked this before, but what's my percentage here? And he gave me a hug, of course, and then said, listen, 2%, right? Like you look at heart surgery and 2% end in death. And he said, you're higher risk than that because you've had history of lots of surgeries before and your heart is so unknown. But he said with confidence, we would not be doing this operation and surgery if we did not think it was necessary. And if we did not think that we have a probable outcome here. And so even that was reassuring to hear him say like, listen, like we're not going to do things just to do them. We want to make sure that you have a good life, the rest of your life.
I think you create a really beautiful picture of what Jesus with medicine looks like. Cause I can, when you're talking, I'm like, I can feel both. Like they just feel like they blended, even Jesus being in the room and how he uses modern medicine and surgeries and doctors to heal. Yeah.
He created those people. He created those minds. God, I don't think God unintentionally designs anybody. And so who is it as us as humans to say that God did not create these surgeons to be surgeons to give us healing here, to give us better quality in life and outcomes. And the other day at church, I want to say it was Friday, maybe, we were actually praying for my upcoming surgery. And as the girls were praying over me, I envisioned God's hands over the hands of my surgeon. As he's at home practicing his arts and crafts, I saw the presence of God almost giving him a hug with his hands over my surgeon's hands. And God reaffirming me like, hey, this is my surgery too. So
I love that. And especially just thinking about mental health and, we in our professions are the caretakers. We're the ones that have the answers. Even like on the podcast, it's like when Alex or Eric is like, okay, as a therapist, it's like you almost snap into attention of like, okay, well, I should know this stuff, but it's a different ballgame when you're dealing with it yourself. Do pictures like that, like in prayer, like Jesus giving you that vision or that picture of what he was doing, does that help with the fear and anxiety, or like what things do help in these weeks leading up to the days?
Yeah, I think getting a vision like that, definitely. There was not a part of me that was trying to envision that. It literally came from God. It came out of nowhere. And so that's very helpful and very reassuring and helps calm my nerves a little bit. But as you said, we can so easily snap into therapy mode, like so easily. And I think that's almost a disadvantage for us because we go into, like you said earlier, like the caretaker mode of everybody else around us, telling them what to do and how to do better and how to cope and how to manage this time that we have. But then it's harder for ourselves.
Yeah. And I even think about people that are not therapists. Like we're not like excluding other people, because I think there's a lot of people that are helpers.
Yeah.
That are the people that are the empathetic emotional feelers, like
Yes.
people that see other people. Is there anything that's worked for you, like dealing with fear, anxiety that, I mean, I think that this could apply to a lot of people, that's been helpful for you being a person that's a caretaker?
Yes. Not being afraid to talk about it. I think we just get so overwhelmed with worrying about how other people feel, or can this person handle what I'm about to say? But that's not on you to really worry about. If you feel you need to say it, go for it. And hopefully that person can accept what you're about to say. And so in this season of my life, I have shared so openly. When people ask me how I'm doing, I'm going to answer them honestly and tell them, I didn't sleep this weekend. I had another round of night terrors and I was up all night. And allowing people to support me and comfort me. Oftentimes we put on this cloak of armor that says, I'm all right, I'm okay, when we're really not. But it's this I'm good mentality, right? Oh, I'm good. How are you? I'm good. But we're not. And so being open and honest and not being afraid, I even have resorted to Snapchatting you on days when I'm not good, sending you a Snapchat, crying on my kitchen floor to share with you, today's a really hard day. And so just, I think for me, utilizing my support system has been the most helpful, and allowing people to bless me through that.
And I think one thing that for me in this situation with you that I've had to press into is being bold, because I think a lot of times when we have people that are going through something hard, we want to avoid, or we want to say, oh, probably, like, I'll ask like in a couple hours after that's over. And to me, I've said this to you, like, okay, well, I'm in your inner circle, so you know that I'm going to ask, like, and so tell me what you need, whether like whether you like it or not, I'm here. And I think, like, sometimes that can maybe we need to be aware of not coming off like overreacting or like over presumptuous, but there's such a boldness in, to me, I'm like, I'm stepping like to the front line with you, and I'm saying like, okay, I'm not going and doing the thing, but I am like holding the line with you. And like, what does that look like? And I think that for other people, it can look like a lot of different things, but that's helped me as someone watching you go through it, of just like, okay, what do you need? Like, or like texting, like checking in, like whatever.
And I think that's helpful too, because not everybody will step up to the line. It is so easy to say, yeah, I'm going to pray for you, and to not actually pray with them. It's easy to say, hey, do you have a meal train, but not offer to make you a meal. It's easy to say, hey, how are you doing financially with all this? You're going to be off work for a long time, and them just feel like they're asking out of curiosity and not because they want to be writing a check to help. And I think as Christians, we go to prayer. We do go to prayer, which is great, but I think we're going to prayer and asking someone else to fill the roles that God's asking us to fill. If you feel a desire to pray for somebody's financial security, or you feel a desire to pray for someone to have meals, or you're praying to ask for someone to provide transportation for their children, maybe God's calling you to do that. And so maybe God's saying, no, I'm asking you to step up to that plate. You step up to the line and do that for them. And then God is giving you the opportunity to be his hands and feet and to care for his community. And so when our only thing that we're comfortable with is just praying to God on our own, we're missing actually being the hands and feet of Jesus like he calls us to.
Amen. Just thinking about faith and how has that played a perspective, I think. I mean, you have a strong faith, but your faith is almost like being tested as you kind of face an unknown, like different odds that you haven't faced before, and you have babies. Like, how does your faith play into this and kind of help sustain you? It's probably day to day. Yeah,
it's definitely day to day, and it's been a very rocky road. And I think my faith has been on this roller coaster ever since my dad's diagnosis in October. And then he only lasted a month longer, an exact month, until he passed.
Then this was
October 20th. Yeah, October 20th to November 20th. And during that time, during my dad's passing, I felt like my faith was relatively strong, because God was also giving my dad vision of heaven. And my dad would come out of these transcendent experiences where he wasn't talking for a long time, or was talking but she couldn't understand him. And then all of a sudden would be like, the trees are so beautiful. Wow, you should see the scenery here. This
Wow.
living room is so big. And my dad was getting pictures of heaven, and he was verbally describing those to us. And it was so beautiful. And so if you would have asked me in November where my faith was at, I'd be like 10 out of 10, take me today. Like I'm ready to go. But then you get hit with your own reality and your own facing of trial. And you think of the things like, I've got babies, I've got a husband, I've got friends, I've got family. And all of these things really start to challenge that faith and belief. And I find myself going into this, God, if you care so deeply about my children or my family, why would you do this to their mom? Why would you make me go through a surgery where I can't hold my babies for 3 months? What is your reasoning? Why would you torture my children in this way? And so I find myself doubting and questioning almost in a daily. But then I have to remind myself again, God does not promise us a perfect life. He doesn't promise us a pain-free life. He doesn't even promise us that we're going to be blessed our whole life. He promises that life is going to be hard. And he promises that we're going to go through suffering. And so I just have to remind myself that amidst that suffering, God is there. And this is opportunity for maybe God to comfort my children instead of them only seeking comfort from me. So
yeah. How do you have that? How do you have that conversation with your kids?
I don't. I ask her therapist to have that conversation. We've been, our 2-year-old.
Therapist joke. Therapist.
Our 2-year-old he's oblivious. I mean, he just walked through 2 heart caths where I couldn't hold him for a week each time. He has no idea that we just walked through those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And, seeing his meltdowns and all of those things were
And not
temporary.
getting it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was temporary of him not getting it. And he quickly just bounced back to normal. And my 7-year-old, and yes, she is in therapy. So I'm like, Linda, you better work some magic here. But with her, just being kind of honest of as much as we can with a 7-year-old of, hey, mommy's going through a really, really big surgery. And mom's not going to be herself for a while. Mom's going to be in the hospital for a week. And it's okay to feel your emotion too. And so I've noticed on her days where she's the most off, like having behaviors, not coping well, having big meltdowns, if I pause in that day and I have a heart to heart with her, most of the time has to do with she's stressed. And so I know she's feeling this as well. And so just trying the same that I'm doing for myself is have those open conversations. Okay, what are you afraid about? Hey, what are the good things? Nana's coming to town. Like you get to have Nana for 3 months. And so trying to highlight some good things that are coming, but also the reality of, mom's going to be different. Mom's going to be in pain. And my daughter saw my last 3 heart caths. And so she kind of remembers when she was younger what it was like when I had the valve put in and I couldn't hold her for, I want to say about a month. So she has a little.
So she kind of has something to go off of.
Yeah, so she's got a little bit there, but I don't think she can fully process and understand. And the other day my husband did say to her, sweetie, like you need to realize that this surgery is to help mommy, but it could also maybe hurt mommy. And so we need to have that conversation a little bit to prepare her so she's not fully shocked. But yeah, it's not an easy conversation to have with the kid at all. And I think you just meet them with where their questions are at.
Yeah. Has your view of eternity since your dad and just going through your own stuff, has it shifted or has it solidified now? Is it kind of like, God, I'm trusting you and I don't know? Or does it feel more like, okay, we've got like a foundation? What is that?
Can I say both?
Yes, you can. Because I think that yes.
Yeah, I think in
can be
moments.
both and.
Yes, I think in moments it seems so solidified and solid of, okay, this life is moments. This life is so minuscule compared to eternity in heaven. But then there's those moments of, but there's still so much life left. And so, so it is this if, and this but, and this what, and it just keeps coming back at you. And so I think for me, it's challenging the irrational, challenging when the enemy does want to creep up and say, yeah, but, right? And I have to stop those. And I have to say, yeah, but God, Yeah, but God gave us eternity, and we are going to have that. We are going to have eternity altogether. And so even if that means life here is shortened, we still have eternity with our loved ones. This time is so small in retrospect to what eternity offers us. So I think I just have to remind myself of that truth when I do start to doubt.
I, especially like when we're going into trials or valleys, it's like, it's so helpful. And you've kind of talked about it, having anchors that kind of are like, this is my verse that's like holding me through, or this is my promise of God. Do you have anything that's been like an anchor for you during this time?
Yeah. Since this is not our first child that we've walked through, the verse that I always go back to is John 16:33. And it's Jesus saying, in this life we will have trial and sorrow, but fear not, for I have overcome the world. And so that is such a reminder that Jesus said, you will have trial, you will have sorrow, but fear not. And so I'm holding truth and trying to hold strong to that freedom that allows, that freedom of knowing there's so much more, and that God paid the ultimate price. And one other thing that, we just had Easter. And so thinking about Jesus being on the cross and how much pain and suffering and sorrow he went through, that is astronomical. And what I'm about to go through is far less than what Jesus went through for me. He went through that so I can be with him. And so if he can go through that, I can go through this for my babies, to get back home and to have a great life with them. And so as scary as it seems, Jesus gave us that promise that he's overcome. He's paid it. And so we shouldn't be afraid.
Amen. What would you say to someone that might be listening, or this gets passed along to somebody that's going through something similar, like a high risk surgery, or maybe even chronic health, but just something where it's like, the odds are not necessarily like 50-50 or.
Yeah. The odds are not in your favor.
Yeah.
Have the conversations. With my dad's cancer diagnosis, we knew he only had probably weeks to months to live. And it was a very sudden diagnosis. And my family did not want to have the conversations. And so we would actually sneak my mom out of the room. So we're like, Mom, you need coffee. So we could have those conversations with my dad of, Dad, what do you want? What do you want done? And to honor him. And I think it's a disservice when we don't set our family up. I always call it like the ostrich analogy. When an ostrich is afraid, they bury their head in the sand. And that is not going to protect them just because they can't see what's still coming after them.
Right.
And so if we can't face what's coming after us, then we can't protect ourselves or those around us. And so for me going through this and then walking through it with my dad just a few months ago, I want to be able to protect not only myself, but my family too. And so if that means I can get my ducks in a line and get things in order on good days, of course, then I should do that. I need to protect them from uncertainty or extra stress later down the road. And so I think anybody listening that is going through uncertainty in their health, I think don't be afraid, right? Like anchor into that truth of eternity and use that anchor to then also help you get everything else aligned for your family to take the stress off of them, because ultimately by your family avoiding it or you being afraid to have those conversations, it's only going to add stress and not take away stress. And so I'm so solution focused. I'm always focusing on what's
your goals?
What's goals?
Happening?
Yes. Tell me your goals. How do we get there? And I think one goal when it comes to health issues is our goal should be, how do we make the rest of this mess easier for the family? And maybe that is simple as I've been decluttering my house like crazy. I keep saying, Mom, I'm surgery nesting. One way I can.
And speaking to this, Shannon, I was in bed and Shannon's texting me like, please look at your Snapchat. I'm hanging pictures and cowbells on my wall. Can you give me your opinion? 1 or 2 cowbells. It was like 11 o'clock and I'm like, I'm in bed.
But you responded.
I did. For you, I did.
like one thing that I can do I know my family is doing all of the cleaning for the next 3 months after my surgery. So the least I can do is not avoid that reality and throw out toys my kids don't play with. So it's less of a mess, right? Hang the pictures on the wall so it's not just taking up storage in the the closet. That was so fun though. So it's just simple things like that. And then also the hard things though. Like I got, my power of attorney in place, and I've got my professional will even in place. So who's gonna take over my practice if things go bad? Yeah. I can't be afraid and avoid it. I can't just be an ostrich, because then that's left for my husband to figure out. That's left for you and City Care to figure out. Yeah. And so I have a responsibility, since I know, to protect you guys from those extra stressors.
And I think too, as I think about like supporting loved ones and what you're talking about, I'm like, these are stressful conversations. Like they're not going to be easy. And I think for families, it's knowing, it's kind of the reality of what it is. Yeah. And to push into hard conversations and to have them, because ultimately you do have a plan, and there is some security that's created in that where it's like, I know what you want. Yeah. Like, this isn't a fun conversation of how am I going to like talk to your clients, or how am I going to like break the news to somebody, like, or just even like let them know like, hey, she did great in surgery. Like, you have to think through those things, and putting ourselves through some stress now of like, I don't want to talk about this. Like, this is not fun. I'd rather be talking about a show we watch. I know. But it creates more security of like, I got you. Like, this is handled. And then it kind of gives more control spread out to where it's like, I've got some responsibility. One thing that I hope people take from this is there's so much power and beauty in vulnerability. Yeah. And there's so much space that even like in friendship or community that we miss when we don't slow down and like, hey, like, it's all sign. I don't like, your highlight reel is beautiful, but like, I know there's other stuff going on, and like, let's talk about that. And so I hope that people see that through our conversation, and just the hope and faith that are found in community. Yeah, absolutely. And leaning on people.
I think it's great that you point that out, because vulnerability is scary. Yeah. Right. Like, we can have 1,000 friends on Facebook, but nobody really knows us. Or we can have 1,000 views on TikTok, but nobody really knows us. Like, we're still a stranger. And so being vulnerable, not just on TikTok, not just on Facebook or Instagram, but being vulnerable in your one-on-one conversations. And I have found the most healing and strength by doing that myself.
I also think there's just a beauty of living fully. And so thank you for giving us a picture into that, because we don't really often get to peek into someone's heart and into their mind when it's like, okay, like, you have a lot of things and you could have easily said no to this conversation. And so thank you for that. Is there anything else that you feel like you'd want to share that's like on your heart? Or
I think just don't allow the fear to dictate and control your life. Whether that be taking the vacation, don't allow the fear, because you just don't know. You just never know what you're going to face in life. And so living life to its fullest, and especially if you do have medical complications or something coming up, live your life. Do not let the fear be so debilitating that you can't get off the couch and play with your kids, or that you can't plan and take one more family vacation. So just live life with that joy that God gives us, and remind yourself that the fear and the anxiety is coming from the enemy. And so he's winning every time we choose to let fear take over and consume and dictate our next steps. Amen. The enemy's winning. But when we can pull ourselves out of that pit and live in joy, Jesus wins. The kingdom wins. And ultimately we win.
Amazing truth. Let me pray for you.
Absolutely.
Heavenly Father, God, we just come to you with hearts full of hope and love for Shannon as she prepares to undergo open heart surgery. We just ask for your divine presence to surround her with a peace that surpasses all understanding. We just pray that you would calm her fears and quiet her anxiety, and fill her spirit with strength and courage. Guide the hands of her surgeons and nurses and all who will care for her. Let their wisdom and skill be instruments of your healing power.
Yes.
Be with Shannon in every moment before, during, and after her procedure, and let her feel the comfort of your love. Grant her the rest that she needs, resilience through her recovery, and the assurance that she's never alone. Remind her that she's held in the prayers of so many that love and care for her deeply. And we place Shannon in your tender care, trusting in your goodness and grace. Amen.
Amen.
Well, Shannon, thanks for joining us today. I love you so much. And unComfy fam, thank you for joining us for another episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and just remember and know your value that you also hold, and just hope you got something great out of this. If you want to leave us a voicemail, we always love to hear from you. Our number is 402-885-9930, or you can follow us also on Instagram and TikTok at CCC Omaha Podcast. We would love to hear from you, but until next time, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.